Since 1996, Scream has carved a bloody path through Hollywood, mixing satire, murder, and razor-sharp meta-commentary into something both familiar and fresh. It laughs at horror clichés, then uses them to kill you. Ghostface changes, the rules evolve, but the fear, that stays. Let's step inside the mask and walk through every Scream film in order. It all starts with a phone call. Not a scream, not a shadow, just a simple ring. Casey Becker answers, popcorn bubbling on the stove, the night too quiet to feel safe. A playful voice teases her with horror movie trivia. Then it turns cruel, taunting. The questions become threats. She gets one wrong, and her boyfriend dies, gutted like cattle. She runs, breath catching, sobs stuck in her throat. She screams for her mother just a few feet away, but it's too late. She becomes the first name on a new list of the dead, a legacy written in blood. The town of Woodsboro panics, but this isn't over. It's only begun. The story shifts to Sydney Prescott, a high school girl with hollow eyes and old scars. Her mother was murdered 1 year ago. The town hasn't forgotten. Neither is she. Her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, seems supportive, until Sydney starts getting those same chilling calls. Ghostface is back, a killer with a mask and a knife. He doesn't run, he chases, he doesn't talk much, just enough to terrify. He wants Sydney, but first, he wants her friends. One by one, they fall. Bodies pile up and panic sets in. Yet Scream is more than a bloodbath. It's a mirror. The characters talk about slasher movies as they're trapped in one. They quote the rules: don't drink, don't have sex, don't say "I'll be right back." They try to be smarter than the genre, but Ghostface doesn't care. Knowledge doesn't save you. It just makes the pain ironic. And the killers, Billy and Stu, two high school boys with empty eyes and bloodlust in their veins. Billy wants revenge. Stu wants fun. That's it. There's no deeper purpose, no grand design, just senseless horror. But Sydney doesn't die. She fights. She screams back. She rewrites the rules and turns the final girl into something deadly. Scream redefined what horror could be. It whispered, "You can know the rules and still lose." A year later, the nightmare returns. Sydney Prescott is trying to start over. College life, fresh surroundings, a new chance to breathe. But peace doesn't last in her world. At the packed premiere of Stab, a movie based on the original Woodsboro massacre, Ghostface returns. Amid fake screams and flashing prop knives, someone bleeds for real. The crowd cheers, unaware they've just witnessed murder. It's a vicious reminder this story isn't over. Sydney reunites with familiar faces: Randy, Gale Weathers, and Dewey. They've all changed. The trauma never really left them. And as the body count rises, Ghostface makes it clear. This time, it's personal and it's louder. The killer isn't just copying a script. He's dissecting the very idea of sequels. In a campus film class, students debate the rules. More gore, higher stakes, and a killer with flair. While they analyze slasher history, Ghostface makes new history, bloody, bold, and cruel. The killers are unmasked. Mickey, a psychotic film student, obsessed with using horror as his legal defense. And Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mother, quietly hiding in plain sight, her cold rage aimed at Sydney. She's not emotional, she's surgical. Sydney doesn't run, she fights. She's been through this before. She's smarter, colder. She expects betrayal. She stabs first. She walks away, but not unchanged. Because the rule of sequels is simple: kill more, hurt deeper, and leave fewer standing. And Scream 2 follows every rule like gospel until it tears them apart. This time, the blood spills in Hollywood. Years have passed. The bodies stop falling, but Sidney Prescott never healed. She's retreated from the world, living alone in the mountains behind security gates, alarms, and fake names. She's traded the spotlight for silence, hiding from the trauma that turned her life into a franchise. But the past doesn't knock. It slashes its way back in. Stab 3 is filming in Hollywood, a movie about a movie based on real murders. It's meant to be fiction, but the cast starts dying one by one, and each death follows a script that keeps rewriting itself. On the soundstage, murder becomes performance art, and fiction leaks into reality like blood through thin walls. Sidney is forced out of hiding when the killings escalate. She steps onto the set of her own nightmare, recreated hallways, duplicated bedrooms, artificial memories. And Ghostface is there too, stalking through a Hollywood that feels more haunted than Woodsboro ever was. But this time, the killings aren't just about body count, they're about origin. Sidney uncovers the truth about her mother, Maureen Prescott. Not just a victim, but someone with a buried past. Long before Woodsboro, Maureen came to Hollywood chasing dreams and found exploitation instead. At one of those infamous parties, she was used and left behind. What she didn't know? She had a child, Roman Bridger, director of Stab 3, her half-brother, the forgotten son with a camera in one hand and a knife in the other. He murdered Maureen. He groomed Billy Loomis. He orchestrated the original massacre. Everything leads back to him. He didn't wear the mask just to kill. He wore it to write himself into history. Sidney faces him alone. The final act is brutal, personal, and bloody. But she ends it. She kills Roman. She survives again. And for the first time, she locks the door, not in fear, but in peace. But this is Scream. Ghostface never stays dead. He always finds another script. 11 years later, Ghostface returned with a sharper knife and a newer motive: fame. Woodsboro had become quiet, too quiet. The screams of the past had faded into stories, into movies, into Stab sequels. Sidney Prescott, the girl who always survived, came back to promote her memoir, a book about healing, but Woodsboro was only pretending. And Sidney, she walked right back into the trap. The town welcomed her home, and so did Ghostface. This time, the killer wasn't fueled by revenge. It wasn't about trauma. It wasn't even personal. The motive had changed. The game had changed. The new generation of killers didn't want to right a wrong or finish a vendetta. They wanted to go viral. Ghostface wasn't just hunting anymore. He was filming it. The rules were different now. Horror had evolved. It wasn't about avoiding the basement or splitting up. It was about playing the algorithm. The killers weren't just inspired by horror movies. They wanted to be horror movies. The masterminds. Jill Roberts, Sidney's teenage cousin, and her quiet, brooding partner, Charlie. Jill had grown up in Sidney's shadow and wanted more than survival. She wanted stardom. She believed being the final girl would make her famous. Books, interviews, sympathy. All she had to do was suffer a little and kill a lot. Charlie? He was just a pawn, a horror-obsessed fanboy, in love with a girl who never intended to let him live past the third act. But Jill didn't count on one thing. Sidney, the original, survived again. And this time, she reminded the world why she was the last one standing. With help from Gail and Dewey, Jill's fantasy ended in a hospital bed, her ambition shattered by the same woman she tried to replace. In the final moments, as sirens echoed and cameras blinked, Sydney left a new message. You don't become a legend by stealing someone else's story. 25 years after the first scream, the blood spilled again, but this time it ran deeper. Woodsboro tried to forget, but horror doesn't forget. When Tara Carpenter answered a phone call from a voice dripping in mockery and malice, everything started again. She survived, but barely, and that attack summoned something far worse. Her sister Sam returned home, dragging a secret with her like a body in the dark. She wasn't just back to protect Tara, she was back to face what she'd been running from her entire life. Sam was Billy Loomis's daughter. Yes, that Billy, the original killer, the one who wore the mask first and died for it. This was no ordinary sequel. This was a requel, part sequel, part reboot. A new generation of victims, a new set of killers. But the past was never far behind. Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and Dewey Riley returned once more. Older, wiser, battle-worn. The killers weren't strangers, they were fans. Richie and Amber, two obsessed lunatics furious about the Stab franchise. They hated what the movies had become. Lazy, bloated, and soulless. They believed they could fix it, that they could make Stab great again by scripting real horror. Their horror, so they wrote it in blood. Every kill, every line of dialogue was part of their plan. They weren't just slashing for thrills, they wanted to hand their script to the world. But Sam wasn't the final girl they expected. Haunted by her father's ghost, struggling with her violent urges, Sam fought fire with fire. When Richie begged for his life, she gave him none. Her knife didn't stop. Her eyes didn't blink. Billy Loomis had once stained Woodsboro with violence, and now his daughter picked up where he left off. But for good, or something else. Sydney and Gale survived, but Dewey didn't. The heart of the franchise was buried in a body bag. His death wasn't just a loss, it was a shift, a reminder that nobody is safe anymore. New city, new rules, same mask, same scream. New York City swallowed the survivors whole. Skyscrapers instead of suburbs, sirens instead of silence. But no matter where they ran, the past followed. Sam, Tara, Mindy, and Chad had fled Woodsboro. They wanted to live, to heal. But the horror wasn't finished, and Ghostface didn't care about zip codes. He followed them into the crowd. In this version of the game, the killer was faster, meaner, smarter. There were no creaky houses or creepy woods. There were subways, convenience stores, and high-rise apartments. Nowhere was safe, and worst of all, everybody wore a mask in the city. Sam was unraveling. The internet painted her as the real killer of Woodsboro. People whispered that she framed Richie. They said she was born to kill, just like her father. And deep down, she wasn't sure they were wrong. Ghostface struck again, and again, and again. Each murder left a new clue. Masks from previous killers, altars built from blood, shrines to every ghost face that came before. This wasn't just another rampage. It was a tribute. The killers were revealed. Ethan and Quinn, friends hiding behind smiles, and their father, Wayne Bailey, a police officer with a badge and a vendetta. They were Richie's family. They wanted revenge. They blamed Sam for his death, and they wanted to make her final chapter a tragedy. But Sam had already embraced her darkness. She donned the Ghostface mask. She used Richie's own robe. She held the knife like it belonged in her hand. And when it came time to kill Wayne, she didn't flinch. She carved vengeance into his flesh, not for justice, but for control. Tara, her sister, looked on, relieved but shaken. The woman who saved her was a killer in disguise. Not a villain, not a hero, just something else. As the city breathed again and police sirens echoed through the streets, Sam stood on the edge of a new identity. She had survived, but the mask still fit too well, and she didn't let it go. 3 films, 3 chapters of blood, legacy, and identity. Ghostface keeps returning because horror evolves. But pain doesn't vanish, it just hides beneath the surface, behind smiles, behind screens, behind masks. And sometimes the biggest twist isn't who the killer is, it's who survives them, and what that survival turns you into. Which Scream movie is your favorite? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to click like and subscribe for more horror content.